This is the Summer of Jim, brought to you by Cinemasker Video, where selection is the name of the game, and by Watches, because you gotta have one at least somewhere.
Hi everyone, my name is Austin. In the last review, I covered Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, a classic that most of us all love and enjoy to no end. That was a very brief review and went by rather fast. And I really have no opening monologue for this video, so I'll just cut to the chase and say that today I'm going to review The Mask, directed by Chuck Russell, starring Jim Carrey, Cameron Diaz, Peter Riegert, and Peter Green. Who are Peter Riegert and Peter Green? Well, you might know Peter Riegert from Animal House, and Peter Green is the Zed from Pulp Fiction. That's all you need to know. Anyway, let's talk about it. Based on the comic book series by Dark Horse Comics, the plot centers on Stanley Ipkiss, a hopeless romantic working as a bank clerk and the nicest guy in the world, who's disrespected by most people and has the luck of Proton John.
Well, that's what you are, Ipkiss. I beg nothing.
Aren't you due back at the laboratory to get your bolts tightened? I should have said that.
One day, while coming home from a club which his friend invited him to but was unable to enter, Stanley finds a mask floating in the water, which upon placing onto the user's face transforms them into whatever they desire. In the case of Stanley, he becomes a cartoon character, able to bounce around and stretch himself at will, and woo any women without failure. This also leads him into conflict with Dorian Tyrell, a crime boss who intends to use the mask for his own personal gain, and it's up to Stanley to stop him as well as get the girl, the gorgeous Tina Carlisle. Yeah, there's a bit more to the story, but that's essentially the Cliff Notes version. And it works, with the concept being the most interesting part and the story being really compelling with how it plays out. And now, it's production time. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Production began around 1989, when Mike Richardson, the founder of Dark Horse Comics and producer for Dr. Giggles, Mystery Men, and both Hellboy and Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, as well as writer and executive producer for Time Cop, and Todd Moyer, the executive vice president of Dark Horse Comics, first approached New Line Cinema about making a movie centered around the comic The Mask, having gotten many offers, including from future owner of New Line, Warner Brothers. Initially, this was going to be the new horror franchise for New Line Cinema, as the source material was a lot more R-rated than in the film, with Chuck Russell, the director of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, the 1988 remake of The Blob, Eraser, and The Scorpion King being put in the driver's seat. Russell wasn't a big fan of the violence, though, and wanted the movie to be more lighthearted and fun than the comic. Because of this, the main character went through many iterations, and the project stalled a couple of times, while one idea that was suggested included making the story about a mask maker who ripped the faces off of corpses and putting them on teenagers, transforming them into zombies. And these are more voodoo zombies, as they're mostly under the control of a certain individual to do their bidding, as opposed to, well, the flesh-eating zombies that George A. Romero made popular, and the Resident Evil games also made popular. When the script was being written, Chuck Russell brought in Mike Werb, the writer of Face Off and Lara Croft Tomb Raider, upon seeing his Curious George script for Imagine Entertainment, where the two decided to make the film a wacky romantic comedy, which Werb wrote the first draft for in less than 6 weeks, and within less than 2 months, the project was greenlit. According to Mark Verheiden, the first draft for a film version was done in 1990, while he wrote the second draft in early 1991, sprinkling in more humor, which ended up being the only contribution he did for the mask. The revised script also forgot that it was trying not to be like the comics, as there were instances of excessive bloodshed and sexual assault in between some fourth wall breaks, such as cameos by Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert. Meanwhile, characters like Stanley Ipkiss, Mitch Kellaway, and Doyle were carried over into the final film, while Stanley's girlfriend Kathleen, who was akin to Kathy in the comics, became Tina Carlisle, and Scully and Vitelli became Dorian Tyrell and Nico respectively. By this point, the project entered development hell, during which they started finding actors for the film, which leads to our next segment. When actors were being considered for The Mask, several actors were potential choices to play Stanley Ipkiss, including Rick Moranis, hi again, Martin Short, and Robin Williams. Which of the latter was cast, it would have still fit just as well as Carrey, as both mastered the whole zany energy thing like pros. New Line Cinema exec Michael DeLuca, who worked on films like Leatherface, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, Don Juan DeMarco, In the Mouth of Madness, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Wag the Dog, Dark City, Blade, and Blade 2, Pleasantville, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, Detroit Rock City, Magnolia, 13 Days, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, Blow, Rush Hour 2, Deep Cover, Boogie Nights, and American History X, just to name a few, sent a tape of Jim Carrey performing a sketch from In Living Color to Mike Richardson, and had this to say about him.
Impressive. Most impressive.
But while Carrey was in the running for the script, even having it rewritten for him, Matthew Broderick, Carrey's future co-star, and Nicolas Cage, who will almost play another character when we reach the concluding chapter of The Summer of Jim, were kept as options should the deal with Carrey fall through. And all I can say is, the latter would have been just as wild as Carrey, if not wilder. Bob Engelman, a producer for movies like The Serpent and the Rainbow, Shocker, the aforementioned Leatherface, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Mortal Kombat 1995, the aforementioned Blade, Mystery Men, the 2002 Scooby-Doo film, and both Dolphin Tale and Dolphin Tale 2, liked the lineup, since Carrey was rather ill when working on the movie, which Engelman recalled, Jim did things that, obviously, when he became a superstar, he would never do. I remember one night he was sick as a dog and he was throwing up and he said, I can't do this. I said, look Jim, they won't let us shut down. If we don't get this, we don't get this. We dragged him out of the trailer and he was a trooper and got it in there and delivered and it was fantastic. But those are the sort of things that would not have happened when Jim became the superstar that he became. Meanwhile, Chuck Russell had wanted Anna Nicole Smith to play the role of Tina Carlisle, but instead chose to do Naked Gun 33 1/3, The Final Insult, with the original version of the character being this girl who seems nice but is really the bad guy. Or one of the bad guys. A costume director then recommended Cameron Diaz for the part, and they even got her to audition, and when she was cast, the character was rewritten to actually be a good person at heart instead of a villain hiding behind the curtain. In a Forbes article detailing the Mask's 25th anniversary, soon to be 30, Mike Richardson said that Diaz was a joy to work with, explaining, if you watch the film again, you'll notice scenes where Jim and Cameron are together. If you watch her face, oftentimes Jim was doing something and she would break out laughing the minute the scene ended. And on that note, let's talk about the special effects for the movie. For the film's special effects, they were handled by two companies. One was the iconic Industrial Light and Magic, and the other was the now defunct DreamQuest Images, whose credits include Evil Speak, One from the Heart, Blade Runner, V and V The Final Battle, Twilight Zone the movie, National Lampoon's Vacation, National Lampoon's European Vacation, and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Gremlins, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the 8th Dimension, Dreamscape, The Stuff, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Better Off Dead, both House and House 2, the second story, Short Circuit, Captain EO, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, as well as The Dream Master and Freddy's Dead, Predator, The Lost Boys, The Hidden, The Blob 1988, Earth Girls Are Easy, Moonwalker, Scrooge, Phantasm 2, Warlock, The Abyss, The Exorcist 3, Total Recall, Hot Shots, Grand Canyon, Robin Hood Men in Tights, The Three Musketeers, The Crow, Crimson Tide, Waterworld, Primal Fear, The Arrival, The Rock, Con Air, George of the Jungle, Kundun, Deep Rising, Armageddon, The Sixth Sense, Dinosaur, Shanghai Noon, and Rain of Fire. There's a lot to take in there, folks. I'm going to give you a moment to breathe. Now that you breathe, let's continue. While computer animation was supervised by Wes Takahashi, whose credits include the aforementioned The Abyss, the Back to the Future trilogy, The Goonies, Willow, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, The Rocketeer, Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, and Hook, plus did the Boy on the Moon for the DreamWorks logo. While a chunk of the VFX scenes were cut due to budgetary constraints, New Line Cinema did pour a lot of money for the effects due to Jim Carrey still being just that white guy that was from In Living Color. Chuck Russell taped rehearsals in order to try to work out the effects that surrounded Carrey's performance, telling the Chicago Tribune, "I insisted on working off Jim's face, and on making the action organic to Jim's performance. No matter how good the effect is, if it's not coming out of character and story, it's not going to be effective. The guys at ILM said they figured I saved about $1 million once I got Jim, just on what he was able to do versus what we intended to do originally." Meanwhile, Greg Canham, who's done work on films like The Fury, It Lives Again, aka It's Alive 2, The Howling, The Incredible Shrinking Woman, The Sword and the Sorcerer, Michael Jackson's Thriller, Dreamscape, Cocoon, Vamp, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, The Lost Boys, Fright Night Part 2, Cyborg, Dick Tracy, Flatliners, The Exorcist 3, Postcards from the Edge, Subspecies, Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, Hook, Batman Returns, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mrs. Doubtfire, The Shadow, The Puppet Masters, Titanic, Blade, Idle Hands, The Insider, Big Mama's House, Hannibal, Ali, A Beautiful Mind, Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, Van Helsing, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, Babel, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and Vice. Wanted to bring out Carrey's many exaggerated expressions through makeup, for which sessions would last around 4 hours, meaning they probably watched Cleopatra while the makeup was being applied to Carrey's face, as that's how long that movie runs for. The costume also had fake teeth that were meant for anything but dialogue scenes, but Carrey wore them anyway so that his performance would be more convincing while talking, because Jim Carrey isn't just a funny man, he's also a method actor, sometimes going too far, other times keeping it restrained, because method acting is unpredictable, just ask Daniel Day-Lewis. And now, let's go on down and give my opinion on the film, because it's pretty much the moment we've all been waiting for. Am I right? The Mask is a movie I remember having the VHS for. You know the one I'm talking about, right? The one with the Pop Secret advert, that trailer for Dumb and Dumber with Don LaFontaine describing what the term dumb means, along with its derivatives.
Dumb, a person lacking mental power. Idiot, an adult mentally inferior to a child of 3. Stupid, a person below normal intelligence.
And even had a clip from Space Ghost Coast to Coast where Space Ghost interviewed Jim Carrey along with director Chuck Russell. Yeah, that one. I had that tape, along with those for Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and Dumb and Dumber. We'll get to that next episode. I remember putting that tape into my VCR constantly and of course never remembered much about it other than the abuse my VCR sustained due to my treatment of it being more akin to a toy rather than an actual device. Yeah, when you're 5 years old, you really suck as a person, and are essentially the biggest moron this side of the house. But that's in the past. I've matured since then, and I treat my devices and possessions with respect now. And the only childish things I do are joke about people's butts.
She got a great ass. And you got your head all the way up it.
Bodily functions, and various forms of potty use. Although, let's be honest here, we do a lot of the latter two more often. Anyway, I got the DVD for the movie a while back, watched it, and as you can tell, this movie is phantasmagorical and one of Jim Carrey's best movies. It's also a great superhero film, and one of the funniest of its kind. For starters, I like how the concept of the mask is expanded upon from the original comic books published by Dark Horse. In the comics, the mask only had one effect, in affecting the user. Anyone who put it on became a crazy murderous nutcase with unlimited power and drained away the user's sanity as a result. With the movie, it's not the mask that makes the wearer incredibly violent, but rather the person who wears it. Here's how this works. Stanley is a kind-hearted individual who is crapped on by everyone, bonds to romance, and has a love for cartoons. When he puts on the mask, he becomes a mischievous, yet well-meaning superhero, capable of doing things only a cartoon character would do, including wooing ladies without failure and bouncing around like a basketball. There's no hint of evil in Stanley's part, so the mask, while certainly a prankster, is still one of the good guys at the end of the day. Same goes for Stanley's dog Milo, for that matter. Now let's look at Dorian Tyrell. He's a criminal, a terrible boyfriend, and has a look that pretty much screams, "You're evil." So, as you can imagine, when he puts on the mask, he becomes an unstoppable killing machine whose strength is akin to that of 1,000 bodybuilders. In other words, anyone who puts on the mask becomes whatever it is they fantasize about being, which I think is more interesting and compelling than just the mask is evil and the wearer becomes Freddy Krueger crossed with carnage. Moving to the main course, Jim Carrey, as you can tell, gives a fantastic performance here, playing both sides of Stanley Ipkiss, both with and without the mask. As normal Stanley, Carrey is charming and endearing, playing the role of the underappreciated employee very well, and even has some funny scenes with Milo. Plus, we've all wanted to say this to that one guy we all have disdain for.
Back off, monkey boy. Before I tell your daddy you're running this place like it's your own personal piggy bank. Or maybe we should call the IRS and see if we can arrange a little vacation for you at Club Fat. That'll be all, Ipkiss.
But it's obviously Mask Stanley where Carrey truly shines, as it's Carrey being Carrey, complete with enough energy to make John Belushi blush. From the physicality to the many impressions and the various cartoon gags under his belt, Carrey delivers it all with a smile, which is more than I can say about the waitress at the diner by the lake. And of course, Carrey also delivers some classic one-liners, including these.
Look, Ma! I'm roadkill!
Look at that. It's exactly 2 seconds before I honk your nose and pull your underwear over your head.
Sorry, wrong pocket. Sorry, son. The dog was rabid. Had to put it down.
Hold on to your lug nuts. It's time for an overhaul. Ooh, somebody stop me. No, but I believe my friends are. Perhaps you know them. Franklin, Grant, and Jackson.
You've got 17.5% in T-bills amortized over the fiscal year. 8% in stocks and bonds. Carry the 9 divided by the gross national product. Fortunately, funeral bouquets are deductible.
Did you miss me? I
spicy meatball.
You were good, kid, real good. But as long as I'm around, you'll always be second best, see?
There's also Cameron Diaz as Tina Carlisle, the singer for the club Coco Bongo, and Stanley's love interest in the movie. And she's pretty good in the movie, sharing great chemistry with Carrie and obviously having a great time on set. This was actually her big screen debut, prior to eventually starring in films like There's Something About Mary, Charlie's Angels, or even Shrek. And this was the movie that helped boost her presence in Hollywood, which is kind of amazing. Peter Green also shines as Dorian Tyrell, the main antagonist who desires power and will do anything to get it, who oozes sleaze and has a presence that pretty much tells you, this guy's bad news. He's great here, as is the late Garrett T. Sato, who plays Dorian's mask form, complete with a demonic voice and bulky appearance, once again proving my point that the mask here doesn't make the user inherently evil. It just depends on who puts it on. Other good performances include Orestes Matessina as Nico, Dorian's higher-up whom he wishes to overthrow, Peter Riegert as Lieutenant Mitch Kellaway, a detective who pursues the mask, Dorian and Stanley throughout, and is most likely Boone from Animal House during the time after his divorce from Katie prior to remarrying her, Jim Doohan as Doyle, Kellaway's naive partner, the late Richard Jenny as Stanley's friend Charlie, Amy Yazbek as Peggy Brandt, a reporter searching for a story for her advice column, who was originally supposed to be killed off, but the scene was cut due to being too violent, and Ben Stein as Dr. Arthur Newman, a psychologist who pretty much tells Stanley the mask was created by Loki and is the reason why it is like that. The movie's effects are also pretty good, capturing the cartoony vibe of the mask perfectly, while the makeup on Carrie is pretty top-notch, and the way it enhances Carrie's various emotions is amazing. Same goes for Dorian's makeup as well. I also like the look of the location, Edge City, as most of it feels like Los Angeles crossed with Gotham City, and the cinematography by John R. Leonetti, who did the cinematography for films like Child's Play 3, Hot Shots Part 2, Mortal Kombat, and even The Conjuring, really makes the city feel alive at times, not to mention looks good in general. Lastly, the music is pretty good, featuring a lot of swing music that really made a revival in the 90s, and a score by Randy Edelman, who worked on movies like Twins, Ghostbusters 2, Kindergarten Cop, Beethoven, Gettysburg, Billy Madison, among others. And that's not bad, fitting most of the scenes perfectly. The swing music is also very nice, fitting the environment of the Coco Bongo Club in the movie, not to mention also showcases Jim Carrey's singing talents with his performance of Desi Arnaz's Cuban Pete, which is honestly awesome, and also give us the best scene in the whole movie that still lingers in my mind to this very day. It also makes me want to see Davis Motomia recreate that, because apparently I just want to see Digimon characters reenact a lot of Jim Carrey movies these days. Overall, The Mask is magnificent, and it is nothing but fun all the way throughout. The Mask was a smash hit at the box office, grossing $119 million domestically and over $350 million worldwide, becoming the second highest grossing superhero movie at that time behind Batman, and even managing to become the fourth highest grossing movie of 1994, just behind True Lies, Forrest Gump, and The Lion King. It was the most profitable comic book flick of all time in terms of a global gross compared to its budget, something only surpassed by Joker in 2019, which is amazing to think that this was the most profitable movie based on comic book prior to the movie that won Joaquin Phoenix's Oscar. It was even the most profitable of Jim Carrey's movies that released in 1994, as well as the most well-received, as while Roger Ebert was unimpressed with Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, he was impressed with The Mask, believing that Carrey found the perfect vehicle, something echoed by Gene Siskel, who both gave the film 2 thumbs up. The film even got an Oscar nomination for Best Visual Effects, but lost to Forrest Gump, while Carrey got a Golden Globe nomination as well as a Rabbit nomination, a trend that will continue on to the next episode. The movie even received a video game adaptation for the Super Nintendo, and much like the other movies in this summer event, also had an animated series, which I should mention, none had Carrey voicing any of the characters he played in the film, with Ace Ventura being played by Michael Dangerfield, and in the case of the Mask animated series, Rob Paulsen voices both Stanley Ipkiss and the Mask, which now makes me want to see Jim Carrey voice Yakko Warner, Dr. Scratch-and-Sniff, Pinky, Carl Weezer, Raphael, Donatello, PJ, Mark Chang, Arthur, and Saber Rider, for some strange reason. There was a sequel planned, with Nintendo Power holding a contest for readers to win a chance to cameo in the film, but Carrey soon bailed on the project, so Nintendo Power instead gave the winner a cash prize equivalent. This then led to the creation of 2005's Son of the Mask, which usually elicits one of these responses.
Christ, did a cow shit in here?
Personally, I think we would all be better off with a direct sequel to The Mask, complete with Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz returning to reprise their roles, while anything related to that film proves Scream is Jamie Kennedy's masterpiece. Something which Mike Richardson agrees with, stating in a 2014 interview, "We've been talking about reviving The Mask, both in film and in comics. We've had a couple of false starts. Even with these though, we'll always have the original Mask to come back to time and time again." So that is The Mask.
I love it.
It's a great movie, and I highly recommend it. Whether you decide to pick it up on this DVD here, which could probably benefit from a green case, or you decide to pick it up on Blu-ray, it's a film that is definitely worth your time and worth seeking out. It's hilarious. Jim Carrey's performance is great as always. The special effects are pretty top-notch, fitting with what the film actually is. The set design is pretty good. And the music is, well, it's filled with a lot of swing music that makes you want to dance and swing. Have a good time with your buddy. It's a film that pretty much is meant for watching over and over again. And in my opinion, I look forward to watching this over and over again like pretty much every Jim Carrey movie that I like. That's the beauty of Jim Carrey movies. They make you want to watch them over and over again. And with that, this concludes my review of The Mask. I hope you enjoyed it, found it entertaining, educational, and made you want to seek out this movie. Because, well, it's a movie that is worth seeking out. So, go out and watch it. So, with that, tune in next time for when we cover the final entry of The Summer of Jim, and one of my favorite comedies of all time. Until then, don't watch Son of the Mask. It'll give you a heart attack. Trust me, just look at this guy. And as always, I will catch you later. I'll see you next time.